Good morning, all. Welcome to the final BDC bite-sized training before a well-earned half-term break. We have a special guest this morning, Bibi Kumally, English lecturer, and she's going to introduce her bronze, silver, gold, and platinum challenge tasks, how she uses it to develop learner autonomy, independence, and challenge in lessons. A brilliant session that I observed. Bibi executing. If you go to the next slide, Bibi.
Yep.
So as always, guys, remember with our bite size, we're looking to be timely, to provide something as value, and always to provide something that you guys can take away and utilize straight away. Yeah, it's an important fact that we want you to be able to incorporate this into your practice straight away, and this is no different with Bibi's wonderful session. So, Bibi, I hand over to you.
Thank you, Errol. So, hi everyone. My name is Bibi. So that's really an activity that was observed by Errol, and the aims of today's sessions is really to explore this activity that everyone can take away and implement in their lesson. So I'll quickly go through the actual aims. The first one being understand how challenge tasks can promote learner autonomy and be used as a formative assessment. Number two is exploring how differentiated success criteria supports independence. Reflect on how the bronze, silver, gold, and platinum activity can increase engagement and stretch, and take away a strategy that can be adapted across curriculum areas. Now, this activity really aligns with our TLA framework, especially when it comes to assessment and learning check, because that's an activity that I've used personally to as a formative assessment in my lesson, and it really aligns with our expert practices. The reason why it does, because it promotes learner autonomy to the best. Now, the context of the lesson where I used the bronze, silver, gold, and platinum activity was it was basically an imaginative writing lesson. The lesson focus was teaching imagery and how writers use similes and metaphors to make writing vivid, descriptive, and engaging. My learner group was 16 to 18 GCC English learners with mixed confidence and ability levels. Now, that's how the lesson went. The lesson sequence was, to start with, learners revised similes and metaphors. And then we moved on to exploring how imagery creates atmosphere and engages the reader. The third step was learners responded to an image prompt through whole class discussion. And the last activity that we did is the focus of today. Learners then completed the bronze, silver, gold, and platinum writing challenge. Now, what was the writing task about? Learners selected their own challenge level with regards to the bronze, silver, gold, and platinum, and describe the image in as much detail as possible using imagery techniques. What is the bronze, silver, gold, and platinum activity about? Learners were given a creative writing task linked to dark or haunting imagery. They selected their own level of challenge. The first one being, or the least challenging, was bronze. And it was where a learner had to include some similes and metaphors to create imagery in their description. And then, if they wanted to challenge themselves a bit more, they would go on to silver, where they would use a range of similes and metaphors to develop vivid imagery through their writing. And then a bit more challenging is the gold one, where they would use imaginative similes and metaphors to create strong imagery and a frightening experience. So it builds up to eventually platinum, which is the ultimate goal, really, which is the most challenging part of our activity. Now, platinum was about crafting a sustained, extended metaphor alongside varied imagery to create a sophisticated and unsettling atmosphere. Learners were asked to clearly label their chosen challenge in the margin before beginning, so they took responsibility of the work. Now, how did that promote learner autonomy? Learners independently chose their level of challenge, set personal goals, decided how ambitious to make their writing, reflected on whether to move up to a different level. So really, it is down to the learner, and it's learner-led more than teacher-led, hence aligning with our TLA framework the expert level. Now, as I rightly said, the TLA framework link, it supports the TLA framework, especially at expert level, focusing on learner autonomy by encouraging ownership of learning, self-regulation, confidence and resilience, and independent decision making. It was all down to the learners. How were challenge and differentiation embedded in this lesson? Challenge increased through more ambitious use of imagery, atmosphere creation, extended metaphor at platinum level. Why did it work for me? It worked because all learners accessed the same task. Number two, learners worked at an appropriate level. They chose the level. Number three, stretch was built in naturally. And lastly, success criteria were very clear and progressive. Impacting the lesson, what I personally noticed was there was a high levels of engagement. Everyone was actively participating in the lesson. Number two, learners discuss their challenge levels. For example, learner A asks learner B, what challenge are you setting yourself? Are you doing the platinum one, or did you set yourself at gold? And then it increased independence during writing. They take responsibility and ownership of their work. More ambitious vocabulary and imagery because they want to meet the challenge that they've set themselves. And then there was strong peer assessment discussions followed by. And I personally used it as a formative assessment to assess knowledge assimilation. So following the scaffolding that happened in my lesson, we ended the lesson with the bronze, silver, gold, and platinum activity as a formative assessment to assess knowledge assimilation and to check how and if learning objectives were met. That leads me to the final bit, which is the green pen check that we used in that session, where learners had the opportunity to do a bit of peer assessment. So they had the green pen in hand to peer assess. Learners identified similes and metaphors in a partner's work and explained their effect. This developed reflection, but also feedback skills. Now, how is this adaptable across subjects? Well, it can be used in different subjects, not just in English, but also it can be used in maths, business, health and social care, construction, sports, science. It can be used in so many different fields, not just in English. Why does it work? It works because learners set their own goals. Challenge becomes learner-led, and it's very easy to adapt for different tasks and for different ability skills, depending on your vocation. That leads me to the final reflection question to take away for everyone today. How could you adapt the bronze, silver, gold, platinum challenge task to increase learner independence in your own classroom? This is a task that can be adapted to in so many different ways and to so many different lessons. And that leads me to finally to the quote of the day, which is challenge creates growth, but ownership creates independence. And this activity actually hits both of them. It's about growth, it's about challenge, but also it's about taking ownership of their work. Thank you very much.
Excellent presentation, BB. Very, very valuable. I love the aspects of what you're saying regarding how ownership, is embedded and being able to, especially within the time frame that we're in within our academic year, where we build up our learners over the course of several months, and by this time we want to see autonomy happening. And your particular session is the great example of how autonomy can, where learning becomes automatic, and the learners are automatically dictating their learning going forward. Was there any particular strategy that you used in particular to when you was defining the different levels from the bronze upwards to the platinum? What did you use as a guide to define those different criteria?
Yeah, we use classroom discussion really, Errol, there. So what we did was to get someone to read the different steps of the activity. So what was bronze about, for example, and as a class we broke the big chunk or the big definition of it or the big characteristics of that step into pieces. So everyone as a team we made it make sense in the class. So if learners had questions there as to what it really means, that was the opportunity for them to ask. So we went through starting with what bronze meant and then going to silver, gold and platinum. Platinum was the one, obviously, that a lot of learners thought, let's set ourselves that target. It's the highest one. I want to challenge myself. And this is what this activity is about. It's about getting learners to challenge themselves in a different way. And it's quite a fun way, I would say, because it's number one, it's a different activity that they haven't used before. And number two, it's them taking ownership of it, but also not just challenging themselves, but they were really trying to compete with each other in the class. So who goes to platinum, who can actually make it to platinum, really.
Fantastic. And that element of competition, I always find it a great motivator within the classroom, you know. We've got some really some comments in the comment section. Irina from business, she says this is a great way to monitor self-assessment, and if students choose a less challenging level, they can always be stretched further. That's a great point. You know,
Yep.
this can be a revolving cycle where we can look at their performance, we can suggest ways for improvement, you know, and cycle that back and get them to attempt the next challenge up. And there's always that particular step, right? Because they can always find their particular level
Yep.
within the challenge.
Yep.
Sylvia says that she likes how you use this writing lesson, and Sylvia's going to try it with her ESOL students as they're now actually doing writing. So just as you're alluding to how it can be transferred across different subject areas. So brilliant there.
Definitely.
And one more comment from Sarah Pagram. Thanks for sharing this differentiation strategy with us, Bibi. I love the
Right.
fact that you are giving learners more autonomy over learning. So yeah,
Definitely.
brilliant. You got any final comments that you'd like to add, Bibi?
I think I would like to add to the fact that you've read the first comment that you read, Errol. Was it Irina who
Irina,
commented?
yeah. Yep.
Irina, yes. I think that's a very valid comment. The reason why I say that is this same activity can really be used for a mastery redrafting of the work, for example. So the learner sets himself or herself gold or silver, for example, and then you as a teacher give feedback based on the work that you've marked with your red pen in hand, for example. Once you've done that, what you could also do is write. So that's what we've got at the moment. I now need you to move to the next step. So challenge yourself, master this, and go to the next step, basically. So it's a really good way of scaffolding as well in terms of formative assessment. So you could just start from very basic and then get them to challenge themselves to higher levels, but at the same time higher levels would mean more of a mastery challenge and stretch to themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Bibi. So we'll leave